This is the Google Pixel 6a, but it's also not what I think many of us have come to expect. See, we've known the Pixel A series as the company's most successful lineup ever, but it's also more of a nod to the past. Just like the early days of the Pixel, the Nexus also started as a premium offering, only for things to not pan out, and for the company to shift strategies with the Nexus 4 in creating the world's first flagship killer, even if it doesn't get credit for it. In sort of the same approach, the Pixel 3a was a genius move. Instead of only focusing on one phone, you could choose between flagship and mid-ranger, with the benefit that great photography became a Pixel trait across the board. It was pretty irresistible at its low price of just $399, but then Google kept experimenting. Over the next 2 years, we saw all Pixels step completely to become mid-rangers, but then this year, it seems the formula is now to go hard on defying the establishment. So sure, even if the Pixel 6a is a successor to every A variant we've seen before, it's different because it's not really a mid-ranger, and sure, I wouldn't call it a flagship either. At a time when most heroes have lived long enough to become the villain, this phone is something else. It's still the hero. I'm Jaime Rivera with Pocket Now, and let's dive into our full review. Let's try to remember the flagship killer formula one more time. These all had flagship processors, powerful specs, and probably skimped out on things like the camera, certifications, and a few other things. But then when we saw the price being so aggressive, it was really hard to argue. Okay, that's the Pixel 6, but with a great camera. I still think that's probably the best value for a phone right now, but then the Pixel 6a takes that approach even further. It follows on the look and feel of its more expensive brother in almost every way. It's slightly smaller than the Pro, but not necessarily what I'd call a one-handed phone either. It shares the same flat aluminum rails, but instead of a glass back, this is actually a thermoformed plastic composite that could have fooled me easily. Yet the choice of materials and the footprint help it feel so good in the hand that I actually like it. After spending months complaining about the behemoth the Pixel 6 Pro was, this is like the answer to anyone left missing the Pixel 5, even if not that small. Once you look into internals, though, you'll debate calling this a flagship killer, but mostly because of certain choices to keep the price down. Flagship processor? Check. Decent amount of RAM, storage and battery? Check. Latest 5G, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth? Check. It's not until you get into the IP rating that you won't get the same as others, but it's here. But where things fall apart is in the lack of wireless charging, though if we're fair, it's never been a Pixel A series trait. Though, that being said, if you came here looking for the headphone jack that was a staple of this phone, that's gone too. I also know it's already become a common thing to get at least some boost and refresh rate on the screen for this price, but blame the iPhone SE for setting the bar really low. The Pixel 6a does beat the pants off of that with a more futuristic approach to the bezels and a much better OLED panel. It might not bring anything over 60 Hz, but at least its color reproduction is far better than most of the phones that go beyond at this price. If anything, I wish the dual firing speakers depended less on just the bottom firing module, but you and I know that even the Pixel 6 Pro has that problem. Larger text and larger icons, which is great. And listen, yes, I also heard there were some complaints about choppy performance from this phone, but this is one of the reasons I really like to take my time with reviews. It was kind of a thing for the first 3 days or so, but it's as if the Tensor chip got to know me quick. Even putting this phone next to the 120 Hz of the Nothing Phone 1, I see the Pixel 6a launching folders faster and being slightly more fluid around the UI. Obviously, that is to be expected if Android belongs to Google, but I will tell you I prefer the implementation of Material U more on this phone than on its more expensive Pro variant. The smaller screen allows for a denser feel and easier one-handed use, which is only augmented by its cohesive design aesthetic. Pixel perks like the at-a-glance widget, voice recorder transcriptions, the in-your-face always-on display, timely Android updates, and almost every other thing you get with the regular and Pro siblings are all here. That said, yes, that also means you can't spare yourself from the things that come with that territory. Like, for example, not being able to remove some of these UI elements if you don't want them. It's the same case with battery life, where this phone is not bad, but also not great. I do consider it sips on power better than even its larger brothers with their extra juice given the lack of high refresh rate, but all you need to do is leave this phone untouched for a couple of hours to notice just how inefficient Tensor can be on idle. The good thing is that since Google already ironed out all the connectivity bugs with the chip we had last year, the experience with phone calls and data connectivity was pretty good while testing it on AT&T's 5G network in the United States or as I traveled through Google Fi. Maybe the most controversial move is with the cameras because, I kid you not, these sensors are at least, like 4 years old? Yes, if you're still rocking a Pixel 3, I won't blame you for thinking that this isn't an upgrade, but it's not that simple. Surely those specs must be dated, but Tensor brings a new ISP to power those cameras, and we all know that when it comes to computational photography, a pixel is a pixel. I spent a good deal of time saying wow to some of these results, mainly given the amount of detail this phone can pull in tough scenarios, and that's even while zooming in beyond the point of these photos being optical. It's got some of the contrast of the Pixel 6 Pro, but not all of it, and yet it's there when I want it, like when I take photos of landscape, and that's regardless of the focal length I pick. This phone can also do a pretty amazing job in close-ups, and since it does a great job at locking focus, this is also while the wind is giving flowers a hard time. Colors have this added sense of character that you'd need to pay for a Pro iPhone to get. And sure, there's no telephoto on board, but even the crop is handled so well you might struggle to notice physics weren't involved here. Same with night photography, where this phone pulls in a crazy amount of detail and handles colors and light pretty well. The ultra-wide struggled a bit in some cases, but not always, and really where I have no complaints is with the primary. Sadly, we don't get a lot of the long exposure tricks of the Pixel 6 Pro, but astrophotography is here, and you'll be shocked to know that at almost half the price, this Pixel 6a takes the same amount of time in taking that shot than even the Pro. Selfies are good, though not my favorite because I feel skin tones are overdone, and even if portraits are mostly the same, I do feel separation was mostly hit or miss, and this even applies to the primary cameras. Where I will find differences with the Pro Pixel is in video capture. Even if voice enhancement features are here, I feel this phone pulls a lot more grain than the Pro model, and where the codec struggles a lot, particularly with the moire you'll see in certain scenarios, it's not terrible, but not close to being my favorite. Switch to selfie video and you'll see how that gets even worse. And not just because it's stuck to 1080p. See, grain is pretty strong, dynamic range is almost not there at all, and even if there is stabilization, it can be kind of weird even if the primary handled that mostly well. Overall, you'll love the photos, but this is not the phone for TikToks, Instagram Reels, or meaningful family videos. To conclude, I think you now understand why it was so important for me to introduce this video with how this lineup came to be and how this phone is not necessarily that. Yes, this is the Pixel 6a, but we saw Google switch the formula with the 4a by giving us a 5G variant. We then saw the company switch the cheap feel for metal and the more aggressive price for the 5a. Point is, yes, this is Google's more affordable Pixel, but it's also another switch in the strategy. Yes, it's like the iPhone SE because it includes a flagship chip, but if we're honest, it's nothing like it because Apple sticks to a 6-year-old design and doesn't take full advantage of the chip in photography. By contrast, the Pixel 6a is almost as good as the Pixel 6, which in our opinion is one of the best flagship killers right now, all while giving you an option to pay less for most of those features. So, it's really not a flagship, it's not really a mid-ranger. The Google Pixel 6a is something else which I feel you should really consider. If you don't care about high refresh rate, wireless charging, a glass back, and a few other tidbits, this should be your phone. It's a Pixel, but less expensive. Another bold move from the same company that already made all other phones look bad with the rest of the 6 series launched earlier. Let us know if you agree with my assessment in the comments down below, and while you're at it, follow us on social media and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this one. You can also follow me on my personal handles to see me enjoy an affordable Pixel more than I have before. Please give this video a thumbs up if you like what you saw. I'm Jaime Rivera, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.